While connected technology is essential for unlocking new efficiencies on the production floor, it's also presented hackers with new opportunities to steal valuable IP and data. To support OT professionals in their battle with cyber criminals, we launched the Security Breach podcast. In each of our over 100 episodes, we've brought in cybersecurity specialists to provide valuable insights and break down critical topics. As a go-to podcast for our listeners, we want to help you align your brand with our expertise. By sponsoring our podcast, your brand will build trust, and your message will stand out to an audience searching for tools to assist their cybersecurity efforts. Secure your share in this rapidly growing segment by sponsoring Security Breach. Contact us today to learn more. Hi, I'm Jeff Ranke, Editorial Director of Manufacturing.net and Manufacturing Business Technology. Welcome to Security Breach. While there are plenty of unknowns when it comes to protecting the OT attack surface, there are some things that are undeniably true. We know that the frequency of attacks will continue to increase. We know that it's not if your ICS will be probed, but when. And we know that asset and connection visibility is an ongoing challenge due to the implementation of more and more automated technology. And we also know that asset and connection visibility is an ongoing challenge due to the implementation of more automated technology. Finally, we also know that one of the most important aspects of any cybersecurity plan is the portion that lays out the response. One of the most effective ways to address these concerns can be the use of attack simulations. The challenges for this strategy or tool revolve around the timing as it relates to production and personnel, as well as the ability to follow up on lessons learned. Here to walk us through all these considerations is Tom Marsland. He's the VP of Technology for CloudRange, a leading provider of live-fire cybersecurity exercises and training. Tom, thanks so much for joining us today, and welcome to Security Breach. So one of the things we're going to talk a lot about today, it's the core of your business, is these attack simulations and what we can learn from them. I think there's a little bit of trepidation within the industrial sector in terms of what these involve, how can impact sort of operations. They don't want to shut things down to go through some of these exercises at times. Maybe you can just walk us through, starting from the beginning, how you typically prepare for and start some of these simulations for some of your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to talk a little bit about the platform that we run those training environments on. You know, to be really clear up front, we aren't running attack simulations against our customer's own network. We're not running these in production environments. It's a training platform that they log on to, and we emulate corporate IT and OT industrial networks that include the tools that they use in their own environments. For building the attack simulations, we really start with our own threat intelligence. I have a team of scenario developers that spend a lot of time reading the news, speaking to ISOC, information sharing and analysis centers that we're members of. They're also members of organizations like FBI's InfraGard, and of course we take customer requests. And so the beginning of the attack development is really understanding what's relevant to the customer and the threat landscape that they're dealing with. Moving on from there, we look at the MITRE attack framework, and we start to map the tactics, techniques, and procedures that those threat actors are using to access those customer environments. Beyond that, we take time to research the specific vulnerabilities that those threat actors are using. And then we develop a scripted attack that works on the cyber range itself that targets those same things, whether it's a PLC and a misconfiguration, or a specific vulnerability that might have a CVE out for it. Once that's done, we spend quite a bit of time making sure that that attack will work with the variety of tools that we procure and place into the cyber range. So that includes various vendors of firewalls, also security information and event monitoring tools, the SIMs, like Splunk, QRadar, and those. And really just take the time to make sure that it'll function no matter which customer and which style environment they're asking us to spin up for them.
Interesting. So I would imagine, even though you're using a lot of the same parameters or a lot of the same elements to devise these simulations, there's got to be some customization that goes in. It's a little bit different environment if you're making beer, or you're making baby formula, or whatever the case might be. Could you walk us through a little bit on how those things might be adjusted based on the customer or the environment?
Absolutely. So a lot of attacks we're seeing today involves some form of data exfiltration. The threat actor is using that environment to learn more about that customer or that industry they're targeting. If you look at threat actors today like Volt Typhoon, where they're deeply embedded into our critical infrastructure, they're not just sitting there. They're pulling data out of the environment about how it's configured, how it's laid out, and what they can learn, so that when they decide to actually try and disable or deny services, they know enough about the environment to do that. So the big key thing that we're changing in those scenarios to customize them at the customer end is the data that we place into the environment. We use, obviously fake records, but for instance, if we're demonstrating an attack against a financial institution, we're going to load those databases with fake financial records, things like that. If it's a healthcare ransomware attack, then it's going to be patient records and things that apply to that vertical. Specifically in industrial cybersecurity, we also use a lot of visualizations to communicate to the customer what's happening. In OT environments, the CIA triad is different. In IT, it's all about confidentiality and integrity of the data. In OT environments, you still care about that, but those systems really matter when it comes to availability. The uptime of those systems are going to cost that customer potentially millions of dollars a minute. If you look at things like the Colonial Pipeline breach, if they have to shut that system down, they're suffering a lot of loss there. So we use visualizations that we've developed that'll show, if I'm looking at, say, the factory floor, and I have an attack on these PLCs that causes these conveyor belts to shut down, I'm going to show a visualization of that occurring with models that we've developed to demonstrate that to our customers. And we build those for various industries. We have a chemical plant simulation, for example, that in a cyber attack where the threat actor is taking control of those boiler systems and potentially causing them to overpressurize, we can actually show that model build up pressure if the responders don't catch it in time, and catastrophic results can occur.
So I can imagine there's a number of benefits from those visualizations. I mean, we've seen that being used in continuous improvement strategies throughout manufacturing. Being able to see it really helps. But when it comes to cybersecurity, there's a couple of different areas I could see that really being plugged in. And I'm curious where you've seen the biggest impact potentially. Is it trying to help improve employee performance in terms of what their awareness is of cybersecurity, for whether it's logging in or whatever the case may be? Is it selling it up the food chain a little bit to help reinforce the need for more of these tools? Or have there been other areas where maybe you've seen a bigger impact of being able to show these visual representations of what we're doing?
No, thanks for that. We focus really on the what I'll call the basic blocking and tackling of incident response. Okay. We focus on the techniques that the people need to learn, and we are very people-centered in that. So when we conduct the training sessions, we almost say the tools don't matter. Obviously they do, but we're not here to try and sell a customer another tool that they may or may not need. We're here to work with them in their existing processes and help them get better at whatever their existing incident response playbook is. So we're focusing on things like soft skills for the team members. How can they work together as a team? And we're focusing on really reducing minimum time to remediate, minimum time to contain metrics for those organizations.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the human element. It's a bigger part of this whole conversation with industrial cybersecurity, as it should be. When you're going through these simulations and you're pointing things out, there's got to be a portion of it at least that says, you did this right, you did this wrong, this is where we can improve. How do people react to that type of feedback? Because it can be criticism at times, and we're trying to teach as opposed to having more of a punitive approach to it. How do you sort of balance those things and reinforcing what we've learning?
Absolutely. When teams first come into the range, there's a lot of trepidation around that, a lot of apprehension. Hey, has my management decided to send me to this because they're looking at my performance? And so from the beginning, we stress that the environment is a safe place. The only way we can get better at defending against these things is to actually experience them. Going and taking a SAN certification is going to improve the knowledge that you have, but it may not improve the ability to to actually accomplish the skills at hands-on keyboard. And it certainly isn't going to help you in communicating with the rest of your incident response team if you're not doing that. So again, we focus on pointing out that, hey, this is a safe space. We're here to learn. We're here to kind of train like you fight.
Yeah.
We definitely get, some defensiveness sometimes when we're pointing out some of those failings. But, we really focus on not pointing out the problems, but pointing out the solutions. Hey, you tried this. It didn't quite find all the artifacts that you were looking for, but here's a method that you can integrate into your playbook that would. And even with first engagements from our customers, we have customers that come to us and say, hey, I've already made changes to my incident response playbooks just based on the first session that we've done with Cloud Range.
It's interesting. And how does that potentially lead into culture? Because I think that's becoming a bigger part of industrial cybersecurity as well. Is it's not just about the tools, it's not the firewalls or anything else you're putting in place, but having everybody buy into it, and that starts at the top and comes all the way through the organization. What have you encountered there in terms of best practices or getting everyone to embrace it to instill a culture of cybersecurity as opposed to just performing for the exercise from time to time?
Yeah, so we really focus on those incident response teams and not the broader organization, which the culture of security really does need to permeate the entire organization. But one thing that we really noticed working with the industrial teams is we've seen almost a chasm, especially when I first started here 2 years ago, almost a chasm of communication between what I'll call your traditional kind of corporate IT SOC teams that exist at those businesses and the people on the factory floors configuring these PLCs and doing that work. The IT teams don't understand the importance or maybe why those OT systems in some cases can't be patched or remediated. And the OT teams not necessarily are understanding the importance of the cybersecurity practices. They're so engaged in the work they're doing to keep those systems running. So one thing that we get a lot of benefit from is just bringing those two teams to the same table together and getting them to talk, getting them to share their processes and why these things are important. That's really the biggest benefit across. And then, across the entire Cloud Range organization, some of the things that we ask all of our participants to provide is, hey, do you feel like the training that you're coming through with us is going to help you be better prepared? Do you feel like it's contributing to your career growth? And we also ask every participant, because sometimes they aren't sharing this with management, what skills are they interested in learning? What sides of cybersecurity are they interested in getting into? And we pass that along as metrics. So we've seen a lot of improved retention and growth from those teams.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, those silos, that's something we've been hearing about for a long time. The IT and the OT folks not getting together, being a little territorial at times in terms of whose responsibility it is. And we know we're getting better. Over time, we have gotten a little bit better in bringing those teams together. Do you feel, or do you have a gut feeling in terms of maybe who needs to take the bigger step going forward? Does OT need to understand IT better? Does IT need to understand OT better? Is there one area that maybe needs to work at their reaching across the aisle a little bit more?
There's obviously no right answer here. But I really think the onus is on the IT teams that have that cybersecurity background as they kind of grew up in that industry. The OT teams are more focused on, the configuration of those devices, the making that system function. And it's not that they're not interested in learning, it's just that they haven't really been taught how important that can be, especially as technology has evolved and as the threat landscape has matured. More and more of these systems, whether it's a cost savings measure for the company or whatnot, have been connected to networks for better or for worse, for things like monitoring. And so that has opened the aperture of that threat to those OT systems, where 10 years ago, most of those things weren't connected at all. And we're still seeing a lot of things that come to the basics of cybersecurity, asset identification and management, even tracking how many OT systems do you have in your environment and where are they connected. We interface with organizations from government to enterprise that may not even be able to give us a clear answer of what systems they have and where they're connected.
Well, is that an area where these attack simulations can help? Because I agree with you 100%. Visualization is probably the biggest challenge we have right now in terms of understanding, as we're adding all these automation assets, understanding just how big of a landscape we have to protect. can going through these simulations be a part of the process in uncovering and achieving a better level of visualization?
Absolutely. I think we do a pretty good job of focusing on what's relevant in the threat landscape today. We're still seeing a lot of issues with simple things, password reuse, credential stuffing, just common misconfigurations that if you read any of the notices that come out, either IT or OT from CISA or from InfraGard or any of these things, these are misconfigurations or vulnerabilities that have already been broadcast out there, and we're able to still continue to highlight the need for focus there. I think one thing that we bring to the table in pointing out how common these things still are is that hopefully these teams are taking those lessons and taking a good internal look at their own systems and just rethinking about that, keeping it top of mind. It isn't a lot of these attacks that we're seeing in these systems aren't this niche 0-day vulnerability that's being targeted. It's a lot of the basics, and I hope that we're highlighting the need for these employers to identify that it's not just about adding another tool to the arsenal that we think is going to solve all of our problems for us. When I talk about the cybersecurity skills shortage, we have a ton of applicants. We have a ton of people that are looking to make their foot into cybersecurity. I think that we have a problem today with employers really not willing to cough up some of the cash and broaden those teams and bring on enough people that they can have a patch management program that's remediating all of their devices in a timely manner. And they can focus on tracking down that shadow IT that might exist. And some of those attacks that we demonstrate in the range are highlighting those things that may or may not be applicable to their organization, but I'm willing to bet in most cases they are.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to wait to bring this up, but this is a nice segue into another role that you have in addition to working with Cloud Range. You're also the executive director of an organization called VetSec. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about your work there and how that's helping with some of these, some of the openings or some of the need we have within security.
Absolutely. I appreciate that a lot. VetSec's a labor of love for me. It's a volunteer position, kind of my nights and weekends. But VetSec's a 501c3 nonprofit with the vision to create a world where no veteran pursuing a career in cybersecurity gets left behind or goes unemployed. We do that by partnering with a lot of the industry training providers from CompTIA to Fortinet, and provide free or discounted training to the people who have served in uniform. That's active duty, that's reservists, that's retirees and veterans. I joined that organization when I was transitioning out of the military myself a couple of years back, and very quickly was asked to kind of jump in and help, and now they won't let me go. So, but we partner with a lot of those training organizations to provide that training to veterans. And then I think today now we can officially say we have one of the largest networks of veterans in cybersecurity to date. We use Slack as a communication platform for our entire membership base, and we have over 7,500 veterans communicating there every day now. We also run an annual conference called VetSecCon, all virtual and completely free to anybody, not just veterans, out on the internet. And that actually kicks off tomorrow for a three-day affair. So it's been a great organization to be part of, and I love what we can bring to the table there to help those veterans out.
No, it sounds like an amazing group. Is there a website or something, or some way some folks, if they want to get involved, can reach out and be a part of that?
Absolutely, vetsec.org. And if anybody's interested in the conference, it's at vetseccon.com. We take applications. My volunteers process those daily, and we not only serve United States-based veterans, but veterans from any friendly foreign nation as well.
Very interesting. That's awesome. Well, getting back to your day job and going back and forth with your PR team, they described you as the attack master. So it would lead to believe that you've got some background into, a great awareness of all the vulnerabilities and things that are going on that are, the darker side of cybersecurity, if you will. What are you seeing right now on the industrial front? Are there certain trends that you're seeing, whether it's the types of attacks, vulnerabilities that are being exposed, or maybe some groups that are kind of lighting up your radar right now?
A lot of the groups we're focusing on right now are frankly coming straight out of China. If you look at any of the typhoon groups that you're seeing in the news today, Volt Typhoon was a major focus of our organization for the last 6 months. There were specific threat advisories that came out from CISA, the FBI, the NSA, and Microsoft around that threat organization, and they strike a chord specifically with me because I was spent 22 years in the military myself, and they're targeting critical infrastructure around our military bases. There's some spin-offs of those threat groups that we don't know how close they're tied. We all know they're China, but Salt Typhoon and Flax Typhoon are the others out there that are, again, specifically targeting critical infrastructure and industrial cybersecurity. Um, I hate to say it, Jeff, but the thing that we're seeing the most still is still the basics. If you look at the CISA advisories, they just put out a great one around election infrastructure just about a month ago now. And again, it was things like multi-factor authentication, patch tracking and remediation, asset identification, and the same things are true in the industrial sector.
No, I think we still have a lot of those mindsets that we're looking to change. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about before about culture and understanding size doesn't matter, sector doesn't matter. If you've got, as one previous guest put it, if you've got money and resources and a network, they're going to find you and you're going to be vulnerable to an attack at some point. So
absolutely. We're only human, and we can only do so much, but it really starts with strong foundations. You can map a program to multiple different frameworks, whether it's the NIST 800 series of frameworks, or even for, my recommendation for small and medium businesses, the people that don't have a dedicated information security team, is just look at the Center for Internet Security and the basic controls they have there. If you can get 10 out of those 20, you're probably better than 75% of the organizations that we're working with out there today.
That's incredible. Wow. Yeah, I've said it a lot. You've mentioned it more than once here as well. The blocking and tackling is so important when we look at this. It's interesting you bring up the Chinese hacking groups and really going after the critical infrastructure, because a lot of those industrial control systems are very similar. And it almost feels like once they have one successful attack, there's a blueprint for others to either glom onto that or to use again and again. I feel like we're getting better at defending against some of that because we're sharing more information. There's a little bit more transparency in these attacks and things that are going on that we're sharing. Is that the case? Are we sharing enough information? Do we need to do more to be more transparent with our peers within the industrial sector? I know we've got MITRE, I know we've got CISA and other things, but is there something more that the community, I guess you could say, could do to help each other out once they've experienced some of these things?
I think if there's something about the way we share information in the cybersecurity industry as a whole today that I could change, it would really be to make more of the information sharing, the ISOC organizations a little bit more open, a little bit easier for small and medium businesses to participate in. CloudRange is a member of the Oil and Natural Gas ISOC. We present to them our viewpoints on the industry. We learn a lot from what those members are experiencing, but with all those ISOCs, they're operated at a cost, and there is a cost to play in those, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that leaves some smaller organizations out. And when we're looking at critical infrastructure today, things like the small utility companies. I live in a very rural part of Western Washington, and just down the road from us, there's a small utility company that's servicing 50, 60 homes. They certainly don't have the money to learn about or participate in anything like that. It's almost even run by the residents of the neighborhood. So I think we can do more. I think our government can do more to help us share that information. The traffic light protocol is great for that, but if you're not a member of those organizations, how are you going to get access to that?
Absolutely. You've talked a little bit about CloudRange and some of the things that you guys are doing. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit, talk to us about the company and what they're doing. Really interested in this term, the range as a service that you also kind of talk about. So maybe you can go over some of those things for us.
Absolutely. So my official title at CloudRange is VP of Technology and Technical Services. I actually oversee kind of 4 teams at CloudRange and our product line. So we build a range platform. So we're hosted in the cloud. The range platform is accessible just via your normal internet browser, remote desktop over secure HTTP. And when you log into the range environment, you're dropped into an emulation of a Active Directory corporate network. It has both IT and OT components. We work with vendors across both sides of that IT/OT grouping to put their tools into that range environment. And we're not looking to, poke holes at their vulnerabilities and show the problems with those systems, but we're really looking to show how a misconfiguration in some of those systems, not just a coding error, a bug, or a vulnerability, but a misconfiguration, which is way more common, can be exploited and demonstrated. We provide that range both from our own attack masters. Those are my facilitators that run training with these SOC teams. But also we provide the range platform as a service to any company that might want a range of their own. And there's numerous use cases to that. If they're doing their own product testing, we have a couple of customers that are developing their own tools, and they want a platform that they can use our attack library, our library of simulated cyber attacks, and they can run that on the network and see how their tool performs at picking those things up as they develop. We have customers who are using the range as that attack engine to showcase their tool in demos to outside entities. And then we have our traditional SOC teams that are running those attacks. Some of them have a 24/7 SOC, so they'll run an attack on that range network, and their overseas teams that are in that follow the sun SOC get to experience and get to log in and try and figure out and find the artifacts. And so by doing that, they're experiencing all these different MITRE tactics, techniques, and procedures that are the backbone of kind of how we map these attacks. And then we can show them what the coverage against the MITRE attack framework is. What techniques have they experienced done against them? We provide that range as a service. We also provide numerous ancillary products around that. We have individual skill-based learning labs as well. So if a team comes in for a monthly training session with us and we identify some of those, weaknesses in the team, we can prescribe them labs that they can go and skill up so that a month later when they're back in, we're not telling them they're still weak in the same spots. Yeah. And then we have some hiring assessments and also an aptitude assessment that we're really working with higher education on. And that's an aptitude assessment that no cyber knowledge required, but you answer it kind of like you would a personality test or any other kind of aptitude, and it really kind of helps steer you in what might be a natural fit for you in cyber. If you're really good at rote memorization, we're going to steer you some way towards forensics analysis, things like that.
Interesting. No, good stuff. You mentioned Colonial Pipeline before, and I've always looked at that as a real turning point in terms of industrial cybersecurity. The lights went on for a lot of people when that happened. Looking at from that time period until now, what do you feel maybe have been some of the biggest changes, lessons learned, things that the industrial sector is maybe doing a lot better now than they were in the past?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that it really brought a lot to the forefront. I think it brought really to the broader American population, I think it brought to the forefront of how weak some of our critical infrastructure can be. We talk a lot about our roads and bridges and things like that, but we haven't talked about the vulnerabilities in things like our power grid or our water infrastructure, And this isn't just to cybersecurity, but also physically. Look at the hurricane that just hit the Asheville, North Carolina area, and there are people there that still don't have running water. Cybersecurity is no different. We have this, we can see the weaknesses in the system when a storm comes through, but until Colonial, I don't think the bigger population could see the weaknesses in the systems from a cybersecurity perspective. I'm hopeful that we're seeing a lot more legislation to try and support those systems. There definitely has been a bigger focus from our government around the threat actors that are trying to get into our systems, specifically from China, and I hope to see that continue to improve. But across the board, I really just think, like you said, it's raised the visibility on what's going on there a lot. I don't think a lot has changed in how we've adapted to that quite yet, but I know, CISA, the FBI, the NSA, working with industry partners like Mandiant, now part of the Google team, as well as the Microsoft Threat Intelligence team. I know they're doing some amazing work out there. They're putting a lot out there. And for the smaller government organizations, including tribes, CISA provides just such a huge array of resources that most people don't even know about or don't even know to take advantage of. So for anybody that might be listening to that piece, go see what CISA has to offer there, because it's great. They're a fantastic organization doing great work.
And it's pretty painless in terms of getting involved and getting those alerts and bulletins from CISA as well. Just going to the to the website and putting in an email address, you do
Absolutely.
get a wealth of information from them. So I'd agree with you 100% there. You talked about a lot of the different benefits that come from these attack simulations and what you can learn about the landscape, the different threats that are out there. One of the areas that I think we're still also challenged with a little bit in industrial cybersecurity is the response plan. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you're able to take some of those things that you learned during that simulation and transfer that to putting together a strong response plan.
Sure. So we don't directly audit or look at our customers' incident response plans unless they ask us to. Some of those contain sensitive data and things like that. But, as I mentioned earlier, from those simulations, we're really testing that response plan. We also offer tabletop exercises around that incident response as well, where we customize those to the end user, to the customer. They're able to bring that response plan into the range itself. They can pull that onto their SOC workstations in the range, and we can look at the metrics around how fast they're answering the questions and working through the flowcharts in their response plans. We provide metrics around how fast they're finding each artifact. And then finally, in that post-mission debrief that we run with the management and the SOC leaders, again, we're showing specific to the individual what they did in the range, what was successful for them, what wasn't, what weak areas we identified, and if there is something process-wise that we identified where, hey, they used this technique to try and find this artifact on this machine, here's a better way of doing it, then we give them all that and recommend that they take the time to revise and reincorporate that into their incident response plan. And I think we've seen some good dividends pay off there. We work with a few state governments and all of their agencies as well. And just a couple of years ago, I was presenting and speaking with one of those states, and the number of agencies at that point in time that didn't even have a written incident response plan was close to 50%. We asked the same question just this past year, and every single one of them at least had something that they had documented as a process that they were going to follow in the event something like this occurred on their networks.
No, that measured improvement is so encouraging to hear. We hear a lot of bad stuff. Sometimes we don't pay attention to the incremental growth that is taking place as well.
Absolutely. And, I want to say it's not for lack of a want from these organizations. Yeah. Most of these organizations, I'm sure that you've talked about burnout and fatigue in the industry. These people are logging in, they're triaging alerts day and night. It's not that they don't want to make those systems better. In a lot of cases, it's they don't have enough people or they just don't have the time. And so I think things like this training, things like the use of AI a little bit, are going to be better at helping them get some of that time back in their day. I think the SOC is really going to undergo a bit of a evolution in the next couple of years from, analysts that have basic training for level 1 kind of SOC and triaging alerts to more of a detection engineering team that AI is going to be able to step up and help accomplish some of that initial triage. And we're really going to be helping tune and engineer those detections to find those real alerts and weed out a lot more of those false positives.
Oh, very interesting. Last question I got for you, Tom, here. This has been great. We've talked about a lot of different things. There's a lot of data that can come to whoever's heading up the cybersecurity initiatives in an organization, whether it's through these simulations or whether it's just through a lot of the different tools that are out there. We're getting information on response. We're getting information on possible soft spots. What advice or what do you do to help customers prioritize this? Because it can be very overwhelming at times getting all this data in and all these different things, different areas that you need to address. How do you, again, prioritize it?
Start with the basics.
Yeah.
Start with the foundations. If you stand up a robust vulnerability management program, if you enable multi-factor authentication, if you hit, again, 10 out of the 20 controls from the Center for Internet Security, or, if you look at the controls in the NIST 800 series, if you hit on just those big swaths that you can knock out with just one or two controls, that's going to reduce that attack surface immeasurably right from the beginning. After that, I really think the second thing that I would focus on at an organization is you have to create a culture of security across the organization. It can't just be the SOC team. A lot of the training we do at Cloud Range is incident response, so it's post-attack, and it's how do you detect and recover from that. But, the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, that applies in this industry as well. And so getting a couple people that you can kind of divest from that triaging for a little bit to put some of those proactive measures in place will pay off so much for the organization. That's what I would focus on right from the beginning.
Excellent. You mentioned sort of the evolution of the SOC and other things that are going on. Any other trends that you're noticing that maybe we should be aware of in either the short or long term?
The buzzword of the day, of course, is AI.
Yeah.
We don't use AI a lot at Cloud Range. We use it somewhat to help with some of our more mundane scripting side of developing the attacks. We're working with organizations to try and show them how it can be responsibly used and where you might want to use it and where you might not want to, especially if you don't have a contract with those organizations where they aren't training on your data. I think the other thing that's just a huge trend lately is supply chain risk management. Yeah. The use of things like the SBOMs, the software bill of materials now. We're seeing a lot of third-party vendors who are asking for that when they're going to work with another organization. And so I would encourage organizations to go look at, in particular, the Linux Foundation and OpenSSF. They've got some great tools where they have employees from organizations like Amazon Web Services and Google who are working on these open source projects that are really enabling these smaller businesses and organizations to generate SBOMs, to rank their repositories and see if there are any vulnerable libraries in the code they're writing, and things like that are just going to really help accomplish some of that work for you that you might not have the people to do otherwise.
Thanks, Tom. And for more information on the work he and his colleagues are doing, you can check them out at cloudrangecyber.com. Also like to thank you for joining us today, and to catch up on past episodes, you can go to manufacturing.net, IEN.com, or mbtmag.com. You can also check Security Breach out wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Amazon, and Overcast. And if you have a cybersecurity story or topic that you'd like to have us explore on Security Breach, you can reach me at jeff@IEN.com. For Tom Marsland, I'm Jeff Ranke, and this is Security Breach.